Would a church having a committee on political issues to help their members vote well be beneficial? That's what we're talking about today on the To Be the Church podcast. Welcome to the To Be the Church podcast, where we explore what it looks like to truly be the church in today's culture. I'm Tyler. This is Andrew. Ben's not here with us today. Cody's running the cameras. So, Andrew, it's almost Christmas time. As this releases, it's what? Less than 2 weeks till Christmas, you know?
Man.
What, 8 or 9 days? What's your favorite Christmas tradition as a family?
Oh, good
or
question.
that you guys do?
Christmas Eve is really fun, dude. Christmas Eve gatherings here at the church, and then we do we will go home. My wife will make a really good homemade fondue, with the sausage and the bread and all the stuff, and then we'll open up our. They open up. I think we open up one present, and we watch It's a Wonderful Life as a family, and kind of eat that all together post the Christmas Eve gathering.
Nice.
So I don't know. That's the first one that comes to mind. We got a lot in our family. But.
Yeah, we're rethinking one this year. So what we've done in the past, we started it 8 years ago, which is where we get pizza after Christmas Eve gathering.
Yeah.
But the caveat is that we each get it from our favorite spot.
Oh, you told me about that.
And so
before.
when there were 3 of us, that was easy.
Yeah.
And now there's 6 of us. And I don't know if we're going to go to 6 different restaurants on our way home from Christmas Eve to pick up pizza. We'll see.
But nobody has a favorite from somebody else's.
Not last year.
Really?
Yeah. Well, we haven't talked about it this year, but
got to somehow get those kids to be like, hey, you actually really like that one from that place. They're like, oh yeah, I do.
Yeah. I don't feel like it's the best way to go about it, because I'm like lying to my kids. Be like, sorry guys, Papa John's just is not open.
Yeah. Dude, Papa John's, man, when I was in college, that was my favorite in college.
Yeah.
Springfield, Missouri.
All right. So we have a question that came in from a listener. Not a Christmas-related question at all, but here we are. So let's check this out. Sunday's sermon on Acts 6. So this was a handful of weeks ago. Choosing men to serve, talking about the Hellenistic widows. And some comments made during the sermon led to a discussion about whether or not it would be helpful or wise for a church to choose qualified men from the congregation to form a committee to study and provide biblical recommendations on political issues during election times. The Bible speaks in some form to many political issues, but not everyone has time to work through them. Hence, a committee could be helpful in guiding the congregation to think through issues biblically. Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, what are thoughts? You would chair that committee here at Northwest Gospel, Tyler. And because I know that's one thing you've been asking me since I got here. I want to start the political committee and chair it. And I'm like, Tyler, come on. But in all seriousness, I think I do not see that type of committee being super helpful for a local church. Generally speaking, again, it's taking scripturally speaking, you have elders, you have deacons. We have these, in American churches, we have a lot of committees, depending on the type of church, I guess. But the general, it sounds like a political approach to the issue, which it is. Let's form an exploratory committee. Let's form a blue ribbon commission. Let's form a such and such, and they will become experts on the thing, and then they will advise. So are they advising the leadership, or are they advising the people, or do they advise? So the pastor is going to go preach Romans 13. Does he check with the political committee? Hey, what would you guys advise on this?
I don't know. The way I read this was almost like a committee to look at the Bible and then say, here's how to vote biblically.
Yeah.
Hey church, here's who to vote for.
Yeah.
It'd be like yeah.
And is that in the scope of what the person or what the question is headed toward? So first of all, in terms of advising people on issues, we have I wouldn't call it a committee, but we have a team of people who do that. They're called elders. And and they would advise people as people seek advice and shepherding and counsel on things. And so as a part of shepherding, elders certainly do elders and leaders within the church, deacons as well, would certainly provide information to people to serve the unity of the church under the ministry of the word. And so those things already exist as Scripture defines them in elders and deacons. Those sort of, I hate to even call it an advisory role. It's like the role of shepherding and managing within the church belongs to elders, and deacons serve to keep unity under the ministry of the word that comes from the elders. So that's the way a church is structured and functions. There's no prescription, and I would also argue or description in Scripture of a committee of such a sort. So it's no. So in a word, no, I would never have a committee like that. Now, it would. I'm not opposed to people getting together and arguing through issues. I'm not opposed to people seeking counsel from the elders on political issues or whatever. So I also don't think that we should be, when we preach the word, areas that the message of the Scriptures deal with issues that have been politicized in our culture. Issues of sexual ethics, issues of, I was going to say abortion, but I would put that in the realm of sexual ethics. Abortion, you think of issues like abortion, transgenderism, those kind of things, marriage, all these things that become political issues in our culture that are really spoken to in the Scripture. So you would clearly herald those things. Term justice is very politicized in our culture, and the Scriptures have a lot to say about justice. The role of government is clear in the Scriptures, and obviously that's an institution that God has ordained and put in place for a specific purpose. Romans 13, 1 Peter 2, and other places would speak to that institution and what it is supposed to do. So you would talk about that when those things come up. I just think it's like politics is such American politics particularly, the merger and the marriage of politics and religion in America is a very interesting one to study because of the presence of what I would call American civil religion. If you look back, I have books written on these things, which I look really forward to in the new year post-dissertation, diving into I have a book just on the way that Scriptures have been utilized on the American continent, even way pre-America being its own country, when it was still British colonies, the way that the specific images from the word and phrases, city on a hill and such, have been utilized on the American continent from the 1600s to the present, right? So you have famous speeches from, people who came over on the Mayflower or early governors of Massachusetts, or all the way to Abraham Lincoln, all the way to Barack Obama, and the way that these Ronald Reagan, that language of Scripture has been utilized in political moments and in moments. And so it's a book that kind of discusses this idea of a civil religion, the religion of the populace in America, which is a thing. I mean, America does have a civil religion, and it's very intertwined, obviously, with images and phrases and phraseology and theology from the Scriptures, from the Christian Scriptures. And so, it's just very, very interesting. And so there's a lot there, but back to the question on a committee on politics, I literally see no way that serves the mission of the gospel in the local church, the witness of the gospel in the local church, in the local community. I don't see how that would serve the mission very well, and that's really what we got to think about when we're like, are we going to develop a committee on global missions? All day. Let's develop a committee on global missions. I could see the way that would serve the vision and mission of the church on the mission of the gospel in our world today. A committee on politics they're going to research, like, are they professionals in the area of policy, or are they just really into a certain, they just watch a lot of cable news? Like, what, like who are these, like, experts? Are these like people who have law degrees and understand policy issues and whatever else?
The question says the Bible speaks in some form to many political issues, but
Sure.
not everyone has time to work through them.
Yeah.
So maybe they're looking for Bible scholars to do this.
Yeah. And so that's a question. And I think I think when the Bible, I already talked about when the Bible speaks to issues that are politicized in our specific cultural moment, we speak to those quite clearly from the pulpit. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, so they would have to be. So this would either have to be elder, pastor level equipped individuals who have degrees in biblical studies, and so they're doing it from that angle. Or maybe it would be helpful to have people on that committee who are actually professionals in the space of public policy and those kind of things. Maybe some historians might be nice, who could speak to something beyond just the cultural moment. I just think there's a lot of opinions on politics out there, and there's a lot of really uninformed opinions. And so I just do not see how a committee like such would fit the mission and vision of the church in that way, and would truly serve to build unity in the church, in the ministry of the word on the mission of the gospel. So
yeah, I think there's one way this could be really helpful.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I told you, you're the chair of it. So cast vision for us, Tyler.
No. And that were if there were a single way to fill out a ballot on November 2nd or whenever,
November 8th or November 6th, sometimes the 4th. On that Tuesday, or whenever, local election happens. If there were a single way that were the Christian way to vote. Okay.
Where it's like, okay, you go for this candidate and this proposal that's for your county and this, if like all the different types of things, if there were a single way that it's like on an entire ballot that every Christian should agree on this candidate, this proposal, whatever this is, then I could see that committee being helpful, where it's like, oh, well, this candidate, this proposal, that is the Christian way to vote. That, like, the idea that that's a thing, in my opinion, is far more of a marriage between faith and politics than I'm willing to live with.
Okay.
And so, since that's not a thing, again, I don't think this committee would be helpful. I think this committee could be fun if there were opposite views on it. You know what I mean?
would like, that and that's the thing, is that there would be opposite views on things. There would be opposite views on candidates. There would be complicated views on lots of different issues. I mean, obviously, when we think of politics, there are certain things, because right away, like when you're talking through that, I'm thinking about this first committee meeting, right, that we're having right now. You and I are starting the committee, and talking about like if there's a single way on the ballot itself. There's, on November 8th, just recently here in the midterm elections, I had federal level candidates, I had local candidates, I had sheriff candidates, I had, tax policy issues, I had other really nuanced county measures that talk about different things they're going to do within the county or whatever. And if I filled out that entire ballot, which I did, and if I did that, I'm filling in, how many little bubbles am I doing there with the black pen? I think it's black pen, right? I hope my vote got counted, but I don't know. It's blue pen. So I'm filling out, let's say 22 little bubbles there. Now, the Christian perspective on all 22 of those bubbles, right? So make the case for the Christian perspective on, here's the 2 Senate candidates, the Christian perspective, which one do you vote for? Here's the 2 House candidates, the Christian perspective, which one do you vote for? Here's the 2 this, right? The Christian perspective, which one do you vote for? And what people are automatically going to say, but then the county measures, like, what's the Christian perspective on the county measure? Like on this certain thing within the county, or on this tax policy, or on this thing. And so there's a complicated nature to it. I do think an argument can be made from the Christian standpoint of why this Senate, why the policy platform of this Senate candidate, maybe of this Senate candidate's party, is more aligned with the Christian perspective, with what the Bible would dictate on this specific issue that's in this platform. The Bible would say this to Christians on this, so you should vote for this person. But the number of policy issues within the platform, there's a lot of complexity to that. And Tyler, the practical level, you and I were talking about this before, the reason people vote for specific candidates or have a specific party identity or whatever is so complicated and so and I know we at times people, especially who are really into politics, want to oversimplify it, but the ways the parties function on specific issues changes more quickly than we would realize. Let's take gay marriage, for instance, right? So the quote unquote Respect for Marriage Act was just passed and signed by Joe Biden here in this week. It was passed through the Senate. It could only be passed through the Senate if I think it was a dozen Republicans signed on to it. There would have been zero Republican support for, in the respect, again, I put it in quotes, the so-called Respect for Marriage Act, I love the names of these things, is to enshrine, codify homosexual unions as marriage from the federal level, and because they're trying to do that in order to just in case the Supreme Court were to pull a Roe v. Wade reversal on Obergefell from 2015. So it was a thing that they wanted to do before the House went over to Republican control. And so they got a dozen Republican senators to sign on to it, which codifies homosexual unions and defines them as marriage under the quote unquote Respect for Marriage Act. Another funny thing it did was it put interracial marriage in that, which has been legal in America since the 1960s, and there's no pushback on it. But they did that in order to make it was a sneaky political thing to be like, see, it's actually interracial marriage we're fighting for. You're like, that's hilarious. So all this to say, they put that whole thing together. A dozen Republicans signed on with that. That is mind-blowing. If you're in the Republican Party, well, I mean, Barack Obama in 2008 ran on a platform where he said marriage was between a man and a woman. That was 14 years ago? And he was the Democrat for president at that time. And so the way the parties shift on these things, Trump was very openly pro-gay marriage. You know, the Republican president here from 2016 to 2020. So when you look at that, I saw a clip from Alistair Begg. He was teaching on sexual ethics from Romans 1, and he said what you're going to see in American politics, and he's like a Scottish guy or something, but what you're going to see in American politics is the meeting of the two political parties and aligning on issues of sexual immorality, right? And he said that it was a week or two before this whole Respect for Marriage Act got finished and signed and everything. But you just look at that and you go, so those are ways, that's my example for how a specific moral issue that definitely has theological implications to it, that definitely is spoken of in the scriptures, the definition of marriage, all those kinds of things, that the institution of marriage from Genesis chapter 2 onward, that's a political issue, that's a theological issue that has become politicized. It's a political issue in our culture, obviously. And so when you look at that, you go party affiliation, going back to the quote unquote candidates, you know? You look at two candidates for House and what the party platform may be, and those morph and change every 4 years, sometimes every 2 years. So one thing I want to say, though, since we're having our first meeting of the political committee here, is I do not buy the argument that there's moral equivalence between the two parties at all, and I at all I do not. So I think that's an uninformed argument, and I think the idea that it's like, oh, it's so nuanced that you can't look at. I just think the parties and the party platforms specifically have radically shifted recently, and particularly the Democrat Party has gone so far into kind of a godless, literally they've taken God out of their political platform, that it's becoming a little bit more of a binary thing party-wise, but then you had the complication of Trump in the whole world and his issues, you know, and so it's just a mess, right? All this to say, but I have my personal political opinions. One of them being that there's not moral equivalency between the parties, but all that to say, this within the framework of the church, what is our mission specifically? And how is that mission carried out in our cultural moment, in our cultural place where we're at in America and all those things? I just think this is here's my phrase, it's fraught with portent, okay? It's fraught with portent. And that's a phrase that I picked up from Rocky and Bullwinkle when I was a kid. And to define it, fraught with portent, P-O-R-T-E-N-T, portent means It means like fearful stuff. That it is. We should probably cut this part out since I sound like a dunce. Warning. So like a bad omen, right? Like a warning or a threat. So something that is fraught with portent is like loaded with a threat. And I just think that the idea of a political committee as a function of the church is fraught with portent. Okay, so.
All right.
I don't get all my political views from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast recently where it was talking about how some people choose one political party because there's some good mixed in with a lot of bad. Others choose the other party or a different party for the same reason, that there's some good mixed in with a lot of bad. And that these are human institutions. The church is not a human institution, right? And that's what we're here to do, is not to uphold human institutions, but to build the church. Dude, I wanted to go deeper into this other political thing, but we might have to wait till next week to do that. What time we at, Cody? 21. Yeah, let's go ahead and call it a day,
right.
And then we'll come back, and this will be our.
People are expecting us to like be singing Christmas carols, and we're talking politics.
Dude, we're talking Kirk Cameron next week, so come back for that.